With Miller Mott College's online programs, you can choose when you study. Our online programs give you the flexibility to make education work with your schedule. Earn your degree without derailing your life. Visit us online at miller-mott.edu. That's miller-mott.edu.
Welcome to Bite Size Bios. This is meant to be a mini-sode that will accompany HDTH. Every week, I will pick a person from history and dive into their lives. All right, welcome back to another episode of Bite Size Bios, the mini-sode accompaniment to HDTH. This week we were talking about, what were we talking about on HDTH this week? It was, I'm spacing right now. It wasn't the Guinness Book. What was it? Australia. That's what it was. Took me a second, but I'm back with it. Yeah, so Australia was pretty wild. I learned a lot. I was working hard to try to make it interesting. I don't know, if it ended up being that way for you guys. I just was always wondering, like I said, the prisoner thing was always something that I was always wondering about. And then when I learned about the fact that basically before it was found, they didn't know it existed, but they always thought it would exist, was just something that I was also found interesting. But yeah, so that was this most recent episode of HDTH. And like I said, this is a mini-sode, so I was going to cover the biography a little bit. I'd like to just, if there was something, which I don't think there is right now, to just break down something that may have been missed or wasn't quite, touched upon fully in the last episode. But I don't think I got it. I think I got it all out. There's not much that I think is worth rehashing, recovering. It was pretty wild how the guy got killed by those Hawaiians, though, right? I mean, yeah. All right, but this week on Bite Size Bios, we are covering Jackie Kennedy-Onassis, and boy, did she go through it. She had a life and a half, at least, right? I mean, when you, there's a point in here where she's, barely 40 years old, and she's a double widow to, two of the most powerful dudes in, the history of, the 20th century. I mean, relatively. But that's why I do this. I want to find out about her. I want to find out about all the different lives these people lead, in addition to finding out how things happen. Speaking of that, I hope you guys will all go over to the htthappen.com and find out how things happen over there and see what's going on, and hit me up on the Twitter page. Other than that, let's go ahead and get to the show. BSB number 5, Jackie Kennedy-Onassis. Jacqueline Lee Bouvier was born on July 28, 1929, at Southampton Hospital in Southampton, New York. She grew up on the Upper East Side as well as in the Hamptons. Her family was very well off. Her mother's name was Janet, and her father's name was Jack Bouvier, but his nickname was Blackjack. Everybody called him Blackjack. He was a Wall Street broker who was known to be a womanizer and a man about town. Quite the dandy, if you ask me. There was not much love between Janet and old Blackjack, and they divorced in 1940 when Jackie was 11. Her mother was very insistent on her having just the perfect upbringing. The family only spoke French at dinner as a child, and her mother did this as a way to instill class in them, her and her sister. That was a large part of her childhood. It was surrounded by horses, books, and ballet, and has been described as a 18th century type of childhood. If you could think kind of like the royalty of the 18th century, what those children would have gone through. I mean, I guess if you can call it going through something, all the horses, books, and ballet. Her mother remarried to a rich man, of course. That was kind of the whole name of the game for all the women in her family, and she married a man by the name of Hugh Auchincloss. And they moved to D.C. He also had homes in other places, but the main place where Jackie would grow up would actually be in D.C. for a little while. She attended the Holton Arms School, and she studied Latin and French there. But then she was actually, at the age of 15, she was moved off to Miss Porter's School in Connecticut to be trained for high society. And I looked this place up, and this place actually exists. I was, obviously it does, but you're really surprised when this stuff pays off. And there's still kids that go there now. I think they said from 20 countries and 20 states, 30 countries. For whatever reason, there was more countries than states. And when I read that, I forget what the number was, but it was just, I was like, why aren't there more people from America that come here? But whatever. But yeah, so she would attend that that school in Connecticut. She would graduate, become a debutante, which is what you did when you were rich, and white during that time, I guess you could say. She would attend Vassar College, but would eventually graduate from George Washington University in 1951 with a degree in French literature. By 23, she became a photographer and a reporter for the Washington Times-Herald, and she was even sent to England to cover the coronation of Queen Elizabeth, which I thought was really interesting. When you really look at it, you just realize how all people, or not, but a lot of people's lives, they coincide, or or you just run into people and never know what people's paths are, the path they're on. But that same year, the same year as when the Queen got coronated, she would go on to get engaged to a man named John Husted. But also in that same year, she met JFK. And so within a few weeks of meeting JFK, she was no longer engaged to John Husted. And Jackie and John would wed on September the 12th, 1953 in Newport, Rhode Island. Now, there was, of course, some drama at the wedding. She was forced to have her stepfather walk her down the aisle, even though her father was actually still alive and still very much in her life. And this was because Jackie's mother really, really hated her father, Blackjack. Like, he really, stepped out on her during their time. So, I mean, she has reasons to, but I mean, you gotta get it together for your kids, he was actually like barred from attending, but what she says from her account, he was actually there. And when she looked over, when she got to like the altar or whatever, she looked over and saw her dad like in the shadows, like crying and stuff like that, which is like, that's deep. But yeah, so the first couple years of their marriage saw Jackie have a miscarriage. She gave birth to a stillborn child named Arabella, and JFK was still doing what JFK does, and it began to bother Jackie as it would bother any wife. All of their effort to have a child eventually culminated in Caroline Kennedy being born in November of 1957, the same year that Jackie lost her father. JFK won his presidency in 1960 by one of the slimmest margins in American history. Also that same year, the two gave birth to John F. Kennedy Jr., I believe it was in November of 1960, and Jackie was just 31 years old when she moved into the White House, which made her the youngest First Lady of the 20th century. She gave birth to one more child, Patrick Kennedy, but that child died four days after its birth. Oddly enough, Jackie took a trip after the death of Patrick, and on that trip she would meet Aristotle Onassis, who was dating her sister at the time. She would later marry him, but we'll get to that in a second. She was 34 when JFK was assassinated, and after leaving the White House, she moved her and her children to a nice apartment in New York City. And it is said that the assassination of her brother-in-law, Bobby Kennedy, in 1968 is what actually pushed her over the edge to marry that Aristotle Onassis guy, because she thought that the Kennedys were being targeted basically throughout America. And I mean, it's hard not to feel that way if you look at history. Like, a lot of them have been shot at and shot and killed. Man, so marrying that guy gave her comfort and security. She married him in 1968. It's interesting to note that the marriage put a halt to her eligibility for Secret Service protection, but she actually, like you said, like I don't know if I said this actually, but she married the guy because he had so much money, he had his own security. So the idea was, I guess, that the Greek security he had was better than the Secret Service, or something to that effect, because she definitely felt one of the reasons that she married Aristotle Onassis was because she felt unsafe in America. Let's see here. Aristotle's son, Alexander Onassis, died in a plane crash in 1973. A couple years after they were married, and this was said to put a strain on the relationship. And he was convinced, Aristotle was, by his daughter, that the family was actually cursed by him having married Jackie, and so he was on a route to divorce, basically, because she thought she brought a black cloud to the family. But so when he was about to get divorced, he died in a Parisian hospital in 1975 at the age of 69. And so because they were still married, after a lengthy court battle, she collected $26 million from his estate, and came back to America and just kind of washed her hands of it all. By 45, she was back in New York and a double widow. And this marked her return to the American celebrity scene. She began a career in publishing, which will last for most of her life. She eventually found another man named Maurice Templesman. He was a diamond merchant. They lived together unmarried for years. She found out that she had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is a form of cancer, in 1994, and they only began to look for the cancer actually when she was thrown from a horse during a fox hunt in Virginia the year prior. So they would have never even found it if it wasn't for the fact that she was knocked from this horse and had to get treated by a doctor. So on May 19th, 1994, she passed away, and she handpicked the people that would attend her funeral in the final hours of her life, which I'm not sure is something that I would want to do. That just sounds so, I mean, I don't know. That's a lot. When I read that, I was just like, that is a lot. One interesting piece of information that I couldn't figure out where the place is, the movies The Grey Gardens and The Beals of Grey Gardens. If you get a minute, if you have half an hour or 45 minutes, and you're like, I don't know what to do with this time, watch these movies and know the context, and it'll be at least a spectacle. They focus on Jackie O's aunt and cousin who basically ran out of trust fund money and live in a derelict mansion in the Hamptons and just keep on going on about the good old days and wear furs and these really crazy looking houses. And yeah, it's pretty wild. It's also been spoofed by Portlandia, if any of you out there think you may have heard of something like this. But I've definitely seen it, and it's interesting to watch. They live a very odd life that is adjacent to that is wealth adjacent to poverty, which is an interesting way to think about it. But yeah, that's Jackie O. All right, that's been another episode of Bite Size Bios, BSB. Hope you guys tune in a couple days when we come back with another episode of How Did That Happen? Once again, thanks for pressing play, and I always appreciate you guys.
Okay, round two. Name something that's not boring.
A laundry? Ooh, a book club. Computer solitaire, huh?
Ah, sorry, we were looking for Chumba Casino. That's right, ChumbaCasino.com has over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+ terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Judy was boring.
Hello.
Then Judy discovered ChumbaCasino.com.
It's my little escape.
Now Judy's the life of the party.
Oh, baby, mama's bringing home the bacon.
Whoa, take it easy, Judy. The Chumba life is for everybody. So go to ChumbaCasino.com and play over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+ terms and conditions apply. See website for details.